Hello, 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 and welcome to this week's show. We are talking about measuring success, and I am looking forward to diving into this. First off, though, let's have some quick introductions. So, if you don't know me by now, my name is Una Doyle. I'm a business strategist and coach. My business is Creative Flow, and I can help any established business to unlock at least 50K in only 50 minutes. If you want to know more about that, DM me or comment below, and I'll be happy to send you a video showing you how. So over to you, Stephen. Let's introduce you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS, which is an outsourced business development service. So anybody that doesn't like making those outbound calls, doesn't want to, or doesn't have the resource to do so internally, please give me a shout and I'll be more than happy to have a chat to see if I can get you in front of the customers you want to grow your business. Thanks.
Great stuff, Stephen. And Jess, that was you.
Good morning, everyone. When we're looking for a car, we've got a checklist, haven't we? We've got to be the right colour. We maybe look at alloys, maybe heated seats. But what if we got a car that had all of them things, but without the engine or the steering wheel? That it won't go anywhere. Sit on your drive. It looked pretty, but no purpose to it. That's exactly what you do when you're jumping straight into your marketing, designing the logo, designing anything without strategies, the steering wheel to your business and your brand, the engine to your business. So that's exactly what I do. I help businesses have a brand, a purposeful brand to bring them more profit and more people.
Fabulous, Jess. That's interesting. I use a car analogy as well, but I'm talking about the driver of the car, as in the business owner. So good stuff. All right, today we're talking about measuring success. You may have heard of the quote by John Wanamaker, if I pronounced that correctly, which is half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. So, and I think this happens a lot in businesses where they are, spending on marketing, spending on various activities to try and bring more clients in, but they don't necessarily know what's working, what isn't working. So this is what we're going to talk about here today. I think first off, one of the things I want to talk about is actually defining success, because success means different things to different people. Yeah. So I think in a broader context, I think we do need to be clear on what our vision of success is, both personally and for our business as well. So I think getting clear on that is really, really important. And that's often, a kind of initial activity that I do with my coaching clients, is helping them to have a clear vision. Because what success is, I think it looks different to each person. I mean, Jess, what does success look like to you?
To me, it's having that balance personally as well. So, making enough money to do that and millions, that would be, great, but I'm not driven by the money. I'm driven by the quality of life, the variety. I'm very creative, so I need a lot of variety in my day, or else I kind of get really kind of sluggish and I don't really want to do anything. So for me, having the freedom of choice to be able to bring variety into my day, to me personally, that's success.
Yeah. And there's no doubt about it. Money gives you freedom of choice. So the money part has to kind of sit with that.
Yeah.
Stephen, what about you? What does success look like for you?
I'm with Jess. I mean, it's the freedom to do everything. But for me, success is having amazing conversations every day with so many different people. I mean, I talk to all different walks of life from all over the world. And I wouldn't have the opportunity if I was working for a particular company. I'd be in the same industry, talking to the same people. But what I do, I can do for absolutely any industry, and I never know where each day will lead. And for me, I wake up with a smile on my face. I absolutely love what I do, and I never thought in a million years that I would say that, because when I did it for other people, I didn't like doing it. But I genuinely, I love what I do. So for me, success is waking up every morning with a smile on my face, enjoying what I do. I love it. Honestly, I absolutely love it.
I think that's so key. And welcome, Chris, who's commented. He's already here. For some reason, it's not showing up in my chat stream for me to bring it up on the screen, but that's okay. And I'd love to know, what's your definition of success? Pop that in the comments. I think for me, it's a combination of what both of you said. Yes, I love waking up knowing I love I love doing what I do. Getting to do that every day is such an immense privilege. I think having that balance is really important as well. I have my husband, I have my sewing, I have my friends. I want to be able to spend time on my health, and just self-care and those kinds of things as well. I think for me, a big part of my definition of success is actually the impact that I make. And so what do I leave behind? And I don't necessarily mean legacy as in terms of a big building or that kind of thing. But it's really about the people that I've touched, the lives that I've helped transform. We're all, the three of us are in the business of helping people and helping business owners, their teams, etc. To be able to have a more successful business, and that has such a knock-on effect on the rest of their lives and on team members, perhaps their communities, any chosen causes, and all of that. So I think for me that's a big part of it. I set the goal. You may have heard me mention this before. If you're a frequent watcher, about I set a goal to help small and medium-sized business owners to add an extra 100 million to their revenues, and in doing so, to create 1 million days of smiles through an organization called B1G1. So go check them out, b1g1.com. It's kind of like Amazon for good. So they have a platform of all these amazing projects that have all been carefully vetted. They're all registered charities and all of that. And so I think for me, that's, it's about how I feel and it's about the impact I make. I guess that's what it kind of comes down to. From a business and marketing point of view, though, we do need to look at the numbers, and that's something that, particularly for a lot of my clients, that are often very creative, often more extroverted. The numbers doesn't necessarily. It's not that they can't do numbers. It's just that it's not normally their first point of focus. So what's your thought on kind of measuring success in business, Jess?
I think I agree with what you were saying about measuring it and tracking the numbers. It doesn't come naturally to me. So I've had to create systems and processes to help me actually do it, because I just won't do otherwise. So yeah, it doesn't come naturally to a lot. And that's what you were saying before about when you don't measure it, when you don't know where it's going, what's working, what's not going, that's when you're wasting the money. That's when you're throwing money at it. And I hate to say this, but a lot of the times as well, when I've met other marketing and design agencies, they're not measuring or having any plans or having any strategies either. So if you're throwing money at something going, I'm not sure how this is working, and then you go into an agency that doesn't plan, that doesn't measure, and throwing money at them, you're still throwing money at the same problem without creating some sort of solution. So this is what I see quite a lot. This is when I'm starting to have conversations with businesses that, I'll introduce what I'll do. I'll say, this is how we'll start off, and this is the process, and they love it. But then you can see the face drop. They could, come back slightly, and they're like, but I've been burnt by, this sort of thing before. Like, I've not heard of what you do, but I've spent money on this. I've spent money on that. I've spent money here, and nothing has happened. So there's always that worry of jumping into something again and not getting any result from it. So these are the stuff that I've noticed happen when you're not tracking, when you're not measuring, when you're not looking at that bigger picture. Like, we've all just taken a step back and looked at the bigger picture of what our success is to us. So without taking that step back, how do we measure it? So yeah, that's something that I see quite a lot.
I think what's really key is that, well, number one, I think it's very hard to measure success if you haven't actually done a plan. So I think that's got to be the first step in measuring success, is that, to create a plan. I mean, just a very simple project plan. So if you're doing a marketing campaign of any kind, some kind of promotion, you want to do a project plan for that. So you want to be very clear on, well, what's the purpose of the project. So that's number one. And then what are the specific, so that's the reason why you're doing it. And then what are the specific objectives that you want to achieve in doing that project? Okay. And then you need to look at, well, who needs to be involved in this? So is it just you? Is there team members, any suppliers? Also take into account, who is this project aimed at? Who's the audience for it? Make sure you're clear on that as well, of course. And then you've got to look at, well, what specifically needs to be done, and what's the timing of it? Okay, so what's the when, the where, that all these things are happening. And then you finally get to the how, as in the measures, like how do we know this is successful? Okay, so you're looking at the why, the what, the objectives, you're looking at the who, you're looking at the when, and you're looking at the how. So those 5 questions that you want to be answering. And so if you have a document that's based around those, and just really get into it. So like I'm working on a new workshop that I'm creating at the moment, all about how to power up your profits even if you don't have a spare minute or any spare capacity. Okay, and so I've done that project plan for that, and it definitely brought things out for me that I might not have thought about. So if I had just dived into it, which is what I used to do years ago, there was no doubt about it, and it didn't work. so just stop. Sometimes I think, particularly for those of us who, have a lot of that creative and or extroverted energy, we tend to kind of have an idea and then jump on it and go for it. And it's a very admirable quality to go for things. However, sometimes that can cause problems, right? So sometimes that means that there's issues with that. And if you just slow down, it actually allows you to then speed up. And I think that's really key. So I think doing that is really important. But then what are those measures? Like, so let's look at it in the context of a project. I also want to talk about some other contexts where you're measuring success as well. But I think in terms of like what you're measuring, a great rule of thumb that I use is to have a financial measure. Okay, so you want one or perhaps more. If it's a bigger, complicated project, okay, with more people involved, there might be more than one financial figure. To have a learning measure. Okay, so what is it that you aim to learn as a result of doing this project? And then the third one is, well, what's how does this tie in with the business strategy or goal? Like, and how do you measure that as well? So, let's take, for example, let's keep it simple, right? Imagine the project was to implement a newsletter in your business. And so you may have a financial goal of, okay, well, because I'm actually going to be keeping in communication with people and following up with them in a way that I wasn't before, then some people are going to be reaching out to me because they're reminded that I exist. Okay. So, so you might put a number on, okay, well, how much business do I expect to get as a result of this? Now, obviously, you can also have specific email campaigns, but we're just talking about a general newsletter here. So then what are you going to learn? So, well, you're going to learn, like, by tracking open rates and responses, you're going to track what are people actually interested in. What do they bother to reply when you say, hit reply and let me know the answer to this, that, or the other? How many people actually reply? Have a look at your email deliverability stats. So you're going to learn from that. Also, there might be some other things that you learn about yourself in terms of learning, upskilling your writing abilities and speed, and putting structures in place to make it all work better for yourself. So that there's learning there. And then what's the strategic business thing that you're measuring around this? Well, maybe part of that is about, well, you want to you're planning a launch 6 months, a year from now, of something new, and you want to build that audience, that you have that ready, engaged audience there. So you might have a number of, I want to reach X number of subscribers in order to be able to do this launch. So I'm going to pause there. So what's your thoughts on what I just shared there?
For me personally, when you're talking about measuring success of a campaign, I always thought it was just as simple as ROI, especially in what I do, because, people are paying me a day rate for a period of time. and it's all about the return on that investment. So they've spent, let's say they spent, for argument's sake, £2,000, and then they get £20,000 worth of new business from 10 customers. Then we know that each customer's worth £200. Is that right? I'm just doing the quick math in my head. Yeah. Sorry, it's a bit early. So that's how I would measure success. I had one client that said to me that he's made 5 times his ROI just by using my services. So for me, I considered that a successful campaign. I do have other campaigns where it's not always that cut and dried. You're playing a long game, so especially in my industry, it's touch points has increased, so it's a longer game.
Yeah.
So the success is measured over a lengthier period of time. So for different campaigns, for different industries, for different things that we do, like I know how Jess would measure success is different. How you would measure success is different. I just always thought it was about ROI, but there are so many more measurables. It's thank God there's software available to analyze everything. Otherwise, it would just be an absolute minefield. It's like Google Analytics, I think is unbelievable, but there are other applications out there as well. But I have no idea.
Absolutely. So, and the thing is, like, you're right. And you're looking at measuring success of your clients, but it's also about measuring the success of your business and what you're putting in place for yourself. But think about it as well, even just from the client perspective, for you at the start of a campaign, and hey, Wojciech, great to see you. At the start of a campaign, it's that thing about if you had more measurables, as well as those specific, I've spent this, I got X amount in sales, then actually it gives you a broader platform to measure success on. And, maybe they learn, maybe they don't get the financial ROI, but they actually learn something else. And so, but that what they learn, that might save them a fortune, that they were going to launch X and now they're not going to, because they've realized from the feedback that you've given them that actually this isn't what people want, and what they really want is this other thing. So do you know what I mean? So I think there's, we can go a lot broader. Yeah, for sure.
I think definitely. As well, like, speaking from experience as well, we can kind of lose interest and lose momentum when we're just focusing on money alone in the ROI, because it might either be working, we're like, yeah, this is great, I'm getting a bit of money in, but then, oh, this is a good idea, I'm gonna throw money at that as well, and you lose that, you can get sidetracked of where you're going, what you're doing, and then all of a sudden you've not got that success and you're like, oh my god, we need to go back a few steps and do what we were doing before. Whereas again, if you're measuring more than just the money, even if for a couple of months the return on a certain ad or a certain marketing campaign isn't giving you what it was doing 6 months ago, you can go, okay, but it's worth sticking at it because we've received X, Y, and Z as well as, so I think that is really important to keep remembering, isn't it? Because even as well with the CRM systems, a lot of them are driven by, your ROI, so your stats and your percentages and your money through that, which is great. But then also be creative about setting up your own automations of how else you can measure it as well. So yeah, I think it's really interesting in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got to take that broader perspective with it. And I think, there's a saying, if you, I always get it wrong, but it's basically like, if you treasure what you measure what you treasure. I think that's the right way around. Does that make sense? And so it's basically saying, measure what's important to you. And if something is important to you and you're not measuring it, then, it's probably a good idea to do that. I want to talk about, beg your pardon, were you going to say something, Stephen?
No.
No, okay. You looked like you were about to speak, and then I didn't want to interrupt you. So I want to talk about something else, which is talking about leading and lag indicators. Have you heard of those sayings before? Those phrases before? Okay, so Jess has, yeah, I know we've talked about that. Stephen might not have done before. So the thing is that you know, what a lot of people measure is the final outcome only, and that's kind of like, you know, if you imagine a football pitch and you've got the scoreboard, and you know, it's like kind of trying to, you know, you've got to change what's happening on the pitch in order to get a different outcome. So you can't just climb up on the scoreboard and change numbers, right? You've got to actually look at, well, what's happening on the pitch. So maybe there needs to be a change in strategy. You know, maybe you need to kind of move team members around, you know, all of those kinds of things. Right, I'm not a football person, can you tell?
Not at all.
So, but the thing is that the lag indicator is is a score on the board. But the leading indicator, like in a game of football, would be, okay, well, you know, how many attempts did you get at the goal? You know what I mean? So in business, if you take say a typical kind of small, so you know, kind of small service-based business, for instance, then quite often the numbers on the board are dependent on, well, how many kind of initial consults or meetings have you had with prospects? And what do you need to do in order to get those? And so one of the things I provide for my clients is a kind of sales activity template where they can track this kind of stuff, where they can look at, well, what's the activity that needs, like, how many conversations do I need to have? And a conversation could be a conversation on LinkedIn. It could be a conversation at a networking event. It could be through ads and things like that as well, obviously. But it's that thing about what needs to happen in order to create this. So those are the leading indicators. And if you only measure the lag indicators, the things that have already happened that you can't change, that can actually be very frustrating. So where you want to be looking at the source of those lag indicators, which are the leading ones. So how many conversations have you had? How many discovery calls or free consults or paid consults have you had in order to get X many sales? And when you measure those kinds of things, then that allows you to be able to tweak them. So if you notice, okay, well, typically you would expect to get one prospect meeting from 10 conversations, okay, just as an example. And you find it's taking you 30 to get to that one. Well, clearly something is not right in those conversations that people are not wanting to have that call. So it allows you to see, where are the sticking points? Where can we make improvements? And the further back that you can make improvements, the bigger the results you get in the end. Do you know what I mean? So so if you can get that 30 down to 10, and then you can get that 10 down to 5, so, I don't have to speak to 5 people now to get a prospect booking in with me, then like that's doubled your results. But a lot of the time people aren't looking at those numbers, and that can make a huge difference.
All this as well, it's for long-term success, isn't it? So
Yes.
all of this work, all of this, you know, this planning and this looking back and tracking and measuring, it's so then when we do get success, we keep it and we have it more long-term.
Yeah.
Like you said, at a football match, I don't know, if you wanted to run up and change the numbers, you'd probably be able to do it, but within seconds you'd be getting escorted out of the place and you'd never be able to come back again. So you'd get that win for like a few seconds, but then all of a sudden it would all go back to like it were. So the same,
Exactly.
without the planning, without the strategy, yeah, you might go, I don't need to measure, I don't need to plan. I'm getting working anyway. But how long is that work going to stay? How long is that work going to keep coming? So yeah.
You just reminded me of a situation I was in where I was talking with, funny enough, another graphic designer, and they were really struggling. This is going back a long time ago. In fact, I think I was living in Leeds, so this really was a long time ago. And yeah, so I went and met with this guy, and he'd had a business for quite a while. He'd kind of been employed and then had gone freelance, and was over dependent on one source of income from a printing company. Right, and what really boggled my mind is that, you know, I was talking to him about his goals and what he was wanting to do and where he was at now. And basically what happened was he'd set a financial goal, and then because he didn't meet it, guess what he did?
He didn't reduce it, did he?
He did. He lowered the goal to match what he was actually doing. And so, and it's not, it's unsurprising even that, you know, he went out of business, I don't know, I think it was about 6-12 months later, and, you know, he went and got a job. And look, you know, running a business is not for everyone. It's not easy. Like, we can make it easier and we can make it more fun, but it is challenging, you know. And so, but I just thought, wow, you know, imagine setting that measure for success and then downgrading it because, you know, they didn't hit it. And so maybe this is something else that we should talk about, is like, well, what do you do if you're not hitting your measures for success? Well,
Keep going.
Yeah.
Absolutely keep going.
Keep going. But also you've got to look at, you know, well, this is especially where if you have those leading indicators, then you can look at those and go, oh, this is where I'm going wrong. This is where, if I fix this, then these other bits will work. What do I need to do to fix that? Okay. Chances are it probably has to do with having a poor or no market dominating position, not having offers, not having the right structures in place, all these things that we talk about over and over again here on these calls. But yeah, at least you're going to be able to pinpoint, and then you can focus on fixing that. Now, bearing in mind, all of these things are a system, and if you change one part, it will have an impact somewhere else. Sometimes I think if you do things in isolation, like I remember someone who I interviewed on my podcast, this season 2 that hasn't come out yet, and they were talking about how they had done Facebook ads, and on the surface, this campaign looked really successful. They got several new clients from it. They're kind of quite a high ticket service. They got several clients from it, but those clients didn't stay. And so it was really interesting. They never had that issue with clients that they got from more personal means. And so, you know, so that was a clear indication actually that there was something missing in the ads or in the funnels or in the approach that meant they weren't attracting the people who were going to stay for the long time like all their other clients did. They did not have this problem with other clients. So there's always, if you have the right measures in place, then you can always, you know, get to pinpoint what the issue is and then be able to work out what to do about it.
I think, isn't it also about, you know, there's two things. There's customer engagement or potential customer engagement, and then it's about surveying what's working and what doesn't work, you know, because you might have this great idea, you know, which on paper looks amazing, but if you're not getting the engagement from people, then you're throwing good money after bad. So I know that if I'm doing a campaign for my clients and I don't get engaged, it's not working. You know, you've got a great product, but it needs to be tweaked to, you know, to fit the requirement. You know, because if nobody needs what you've got, it's not a great product or service, is it? Really, it might look great, but there's a reason why it's never been invented beforehand, because nobody needs it. You know,
sometimes,
So
sometimes,
I think
more often than not, though, that's not the case.
Right, but it isn't also so. But on the flip side, isn't it about doing a survey? You know, seeing what people want, what's lacking, what's missing, and then using that measurable to tweak what you potentially have to offer to fit.
Yeah, I think market research, whether it's done through a survey, whether it's done through calls, I mean, that's definitely an added value that you're providing, is feedback of what people are saying, right? And specific market research where people have got focus groups or call people, you know, whatever format it might take. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to understand your prospects, you've got to understand your customers, and what it is that they really want and what they need. And I think a lot of the time, we know what people need, and I think it's easy to forget about what people want. And so, in those situations, what you want to do is you want to get people into the room with what they want and then give them what they actually need. But there's a whole education process around that, obviously, because, you can't kind of just switch it. I'm not talking about a kind of switch and baiting kind of thing. What I'm talking about is educating people so they realize, oh, okay, yeah, now I understand why X is happening. I do want Y. Thank you. So that is for sure. I just want to talk about it. So we've talked about measuring success, kind of defining success. We've talked about it on a kind of project basis. We've talked about it on a kind of sales activity basis. But I also want to talk about it more from a kind of overall business planning perspective as well. And so, what I talked about is actually pretty similar from the project side of it. Is that, so I'm doing 90-day plans myself with my clients. And so with that 90-day plans, that there needs to be some measures of success there as well. And so, one measure of success is part of what we create in 90-day plans is a weekly breakdown. And so it's very specific, kind of typically 1 to 3 activities a week on building your business. Okay, so this is not the everyday running of your business, excuse me, but those project building tasks, those promotional projects. And so, that's one very simple way of measuring success, like tick, tick, tick. Okay, no, this hasn't been achieved, in which case you then figure out, okay, why hasn't it been achieved? So is it a mindset issue? Is it you're not making time for it? Is it a skill issue? Is it something else, right? So so that's one thing that you can do, and I think it's really important. And get accountability, if that's going to help you as well. For most people, it does help them. There's a few people it doesn't really work, but for most people, have that accountability in place so that you don't get to the end of your 90 days or even worse, a year plan, and realize, oh, I've not achieved what I set out to do. Okay, so break things down. Okay, so obviously you also want to have the financial measures in terms of sales, but also look at, well, how many prospects, how many leads do I need to generate in order to achieve this? What do I need people to be actually buying? How do I make sure that I'm focusing my activities on that? The amount of times I talk with clients and they've never worked out like what their capacity is and how much, look at their pricing and then, well, how much, if they were at full capacity, bearing in mind all the things they need to do that is not delivering to clients, then how much can they actually make? Okay, if you're a product-based business, it's it's the same. What's your production capacity? What's your storage stock situation? All of those kinds of things. If you're actually making stuff as opposed to buying in, and but it's as there are constraints always on capacity in some way or another, whether it's our own time, team members, storage space, production. So understand those constraints when you're looking at your numbers. Okay, so and then if there's a blockage, if it's like, wow, well, actually we could do so much more. There's lots of people out there. I think there's lots of people out there who they could be making a lot more money if they had those constraints lifted. I spoke to someone at an exhibition recently, and he was like, it's a well-established business. They've been going a long time, and they have no problem selling. Okay, they've no problem selling at all. The issue they have is staff. Okay, so for them, it's the staffing issues that are caused. The fact that they can't find staff. I would love to have more in-depth conversations with this person, because a lot of the time people have a belief about staff constraints. Oh, there's nobody good out there. I can't find people. And of course, we have the whole Great Resignation going on. Like, yeah, I think particularly for some industries like digital marketing and things like that as well. It wasn't that, it was a different one, but it's really easy to say, oh, there's nobody out there, there's a shortage of staff. But the thing is that there's, just like in getting customers, you can do exactly the same things to attract and keep the best employees, the same way that you want to attract and keep the best customers. It just requires the same kind of thinking being applied to it. So anyway, whatever those constraints are, we can, we need to, number one, take them into account for where we are today, but also we can be planning to remove or change those constraints to allow us more capacity, and to be able to increase revenues and, more importantly, profits. So, questions, thoughts?
I like what you said. You're talking about in your, what you do with your clients is you do the 90-day planning, and you break it down into bite-sized chunks, more manageable chunks, like the daily tasks. I mean, if you don't complete those tasks, you don't forget about them. They still need doing. You just move the date, further along. It's like the other chap, the graphic designer that you spoke to, that because he didn't achieve his financial goal, he lowered it. You're not going to grow.
No plan.
Yeah,
there was no plan, no strategy, nothing behind it. It was just a random number.
You've got to be accountable to figure out how you're going to grow your business. And you need structure, you need accountability, not just in business but in life. That's the only way you're going to progress and grow. So and I said this to you before we started, every day is a learning day. There's so many things that we didn't know yesterday that we know today, that help us to grow and be successful, and we learn from our mistakes. So nothing is wrong. It's a mistake that we learn. Yeah, exactly. It helps us to be better the next day. But I truly believe in planning and being accountable to help you be successful. Absolutely, without question.
I think actually, I just want to make sure that I've made this clear enough. Is that we've got to make sure when we're putting a financial goal in place, we need to know what makes up that financial goal. How many of what are you selling in order to achieve that? And then what activities need to be taking place in order for those sales to happen? Now, the chances are it's not going to happen exactly as you've laid out. But if you have that plan there, it'll probably be somewhere near. And it might even be more than in terms of final results, or maybe the makeup is slightly different, but you still hit that financial goal. But the point is that when you tie these things together and have them aligned, that what's happening on the pitch and the scores are much more likely to kind of work together, rather than you having. I've seen it so many times where people, they have a business plan and they put numbers in, and of course we're all making educated guesses when we're doing this. It's forecasting. It's not kind of complete psychic seeing, right? But when there's numbers and no activities, then where do they come from? They're literally just going like that, aren't you? But also what some people do in planning is they have activities and no numbers. So you want to have both with that. And then when you do that, that not only allows you to be able to measure your success, but you're also way more likely to actually achieve the success that you're looking to measure.
I agree.
I think as well, Steve, what you said about knowing more today than we did yesterday to help you push through that. I think that's really key as well, because when you're measuring, you're spotting them gaps, you're spotting them frictions, you're spotting the opportunities to be able to jump on to then get to your goal. If you're not measuring it, if you're not checking it, how you spot, opportunities are always coming to us, aren't they? Oh, they're always coming to us. But how are we seeing them? How our eyes open to be seeing them, and without checking in and taking a step back and checking in, we're not going to see them. So yeah, I liked that point as well, that not only measuring, tracking will get you to the goal that you've set in for yourself, but it can also open up an even bigger goal that you might have thought impossible for a few years, or might have not even thought possible at all. So
yeah, definitely fabulous. Well, look, I think we have covered some really great stuff here today. I know this might not be maybe it's not as a popular topic as get sales now. yet is actually something that will really help you to get sales. So, you know, thank you for staying with us. Please let us know your thoughts on what we have talked about here today, you know, in the comments below. If you want to know more in terms of how any of us here can help you, if you found value in what we talked about here today, do please reach out. We would love to hear from you. We will be back here same time next week. I think next week we're talking about brand photography, aren't we? Yeah. So if I've got that right, you'll find out when it's posted in the next couple of days. Brilliant. Well, thank you as always, Jess and Stephen, for being here as a co-host. It's always great to have the questions and you know, the thoughts that you share as well. So we will say bye for now and see you same time next week.
Take care. Have a good
Bye,
day.
everyone.